Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Public Safety Work Session of the Monday, July 21st, 2025 meeting. Today we have two topics on the agenda. Oh, there she is. Today we have two topics on the agenda. A briefing on the 2024 Police Statistical Data Report, and the second one is a resolution to approve supplemental appropriation 2576 to the FY25 operating budget, Montgomery County Government, Montgomery County Fire and Rescue Service, the FY25 Senator Amos Fire, Rescue, and Ambulance Fund, State 508 grant, in about $2 million. The source of funds is from a state grant. Please note that Councilmember Mink, as we see her in the corner here, Councilmember Mink is joining us virtually, and once again, I'd like to thank Ms. Farag for preparing the staff report for the topics today and always assembling an informative packet for us. And unless the other committee members have anything to as opening comments, I'm going to ask the panel to please introduce themselves, and if they have opening comments, and then ask Ms. Farag to walk us through. We good? Okay, please.
Good morning. I'm Captain Eric Sandcliffe, Policy and Planning Division.
Assistant Chief Nicholas Augustine, Chief of Management Services Bureau.
Lieutenant Cody Fields, Executive Officer for Management Services Bureau.
And as we begin, as I ask Ms. Farag to lead us through, the first topic, it's a briefing, so there is no vote. On the second topic, there will be a vote, recommendation. Ms. Farag, please.
Sorry about that. Good morning, everyone. Yes, just to give a little bit of background on the Police Statistical Data Report, there have been a couple of bills over the past 5 years, including Bill 3319 and Bills 4520, which require a pretty extensive variety of different disaggregated data sets that the police department must report out to each year to the council. The department transmitted this report, which is for the calendar year 2024, on February 1st, as required under the bill. It was released to the council on February 25th, by the council on February 25th, and the council held a public hearing on March 18th. During that public hearing, there was one speaker for the hearing, and there was written testimony received. In terms of compliance with the bill, I have reviewed the 2024 annual report provided by the department, as well as the available data Montgomery data sets. All information is available this year other than an annual survey of police officers. And I'd like to start with the annual survey. This has not been funded in the police department's budget. There had been $100,000 recommended in the FY24 operating budget, which was not approved by council. We did not see any available or recommended funding in the recommended FY25 or FY26 operating budgets. However, despite that, the department has moved forward with a lower cost option to conduct a community survey, and in November of 2024, it used a Microsoft form-based survey published on MCPD social media, including Nextdoor. And a copy of the survey and its results are included on circles 18 through 23. The survey included both multiple choice and open-ended questions to capture community sentiment. It was available to community members in both English and Spanish. The bill also requires an annual survey of officers, and the department has advised it has not yet surveyed officers, that the department is currently working with the FOP to achieve an acceptable process for this. In terms of finding, the survey captured responses from 84 people, 81 of whom lived in the county. The responses were well spread across the 6 police districts, and there's a demographic breakdown of the respondents in the table on page 3. Of those who responded, 82% either highly trust or mostly trust MCPD to provide for their safety, and similarly, 79% of respondents felt either very safe or mostly safe in their neighborhoods. The survey also included some open-ended questions, which the department consolidated into general categories and themes. In terms of what the department can do to increase levels of trust, the most popular response was to be, quote, visible and more patrols. Similarly, the most popular response for what the department can do to increase respondents' perception of safety was visibility, especially after dark. And when asked what the department can do to improve, the most frequent responses were to, quote, enforce laws and reduce crime and to increase visibility. And there's some charts for you, some of the survey results on pages 4 and 5. For some survey considerations, this is the first time that the department has done this type of survey. I do note that they conducted it with no appropriated funding. I do believe it is a good start to better understand what residents think about police services. But one of the limitations to online surveys is that only those who see the survey can choose to participate, and that creates some self-selection bias, and it makes it less likely to be representative of the entire community. In this case, the survey respondents skewed older, with more than 60% over the age of 56, and there was minimal participation from residents under 35. White residents were overrepresented relative to the county's population, while Latino, Asian, and Black residents were underrepresented. It would be helpful in future surveys included targeted outreach to underrepresented communities, as well as a consideration for data weighting to improve representation and validity in a manner similar to the national community survey that the county government conducts every few years. Again, I want to reiterate that this type of survey would likely require the type of survey platforms discussed in prior briefings, which would require additional funding. However, I do want to turn it over to the police department at this point because they do have a new survey tool that they're about to deploy in August.
Please.
Good morning. First of all, thank you for having us here today to talk about the 2024 Police Statistical Data Report. So after seeing the results from this preliminary survey back in November 2024, we have been able to utilize a new survey platform. And through this is going to be through our Emergency Communications Center. So anytime a community member, whether they reside here, work here, or commuting through, calls 911, they will receive a text message after their call for service asking about the police service they received, not only from the call taker perspective, but also the officer's perspective. I'm going to have Lieutenant Fields read over the questions that will be asked in this survey that the community will receive. And it will be in multiple languages when the text message is sent out to the community member.
Thank you, Assistant Chief. As mentioned, there's a series of about 15 questions that we are considering reaching out to each individual who calls 911 for certain call types. And the purpose of this is not to re-victimize individuals depending on the call type as well. It's for, during the pilot program, to make sure that we actually have the ability to assess our dispatch center and our officers' performance and response. So the first question would be, who did you actually interact with, whether it's a dispatcher, a call taker, police officer, or another staff member? As we have more than just police officers and dispatchers interacting with the community, individuals can come into our police stations and file reports. Individuals can interact with many others. So it's based on your interaction. How do you view the agency in general? And then thinking about the interaction with the 911 center dispatcher or call taker, do you agree with the following? And it assesses professionalism, a reasonable time frame for responsiveness, whether the call taker or the individual understood the questions that were asked, if they processed the call quickly, and if the individual provided clear direction. And then very similarly, we ask about the exchange with officers. So the exchange is asked whether the individual was treated with respect by the police department and by the officer in general, if they were treated fairly, if the individual felt that the officer and staff listened to them, if their questions were answered, and then if the individual surveyed understood what the officer or the staff was relaying. And then point blank, we ask yes, no, or not applicable is, did you receive the help available or the help that you needed? And if not, there's further questions as to why. And we want to gauge if individuals feel as though they did not receive service appropriately, what that actual reasoning is, such as told no officers were available, whether they were out of Montgomery County jurisdiction, if they were told it was not a police matter, such as a civil dispute or anything in those regards, if an officer didn't respond, or if they don't know, or if it's not applicable. And then we get into some of the parameters we were attempting to capture during the community's trust survey as to how can this agency, how can Montgomery County Police best serve the community? And there's a list of different things such as increased patrol car visibility, as Ms. Farag mentioned, decrease patrol car visibility, increase community engagement, increase our information sharing, increase the agency staffing, and increase officer training. And then we also want to know what the individual's primary concern is in their community. It's an optional question, but are they concerned about drug use, sales, theft? And it doesn't identify, what type of drug or what category, but we just want to know in general, are they worried about physical attacks, gun violence, gang activity, quality of life issues such as the unhoused or disorderly conduct in the area, or traffic offenses? And then there's a short answer point where, is there anything else you'd like to add about the interaction? Just very generic, very the ability for the individual to report back. We ask to capture gender and demographics of the individual surveyed. We ask to capture their age range. And then, do you trust Montgomery County Police Department to provide for your public safety? Do you feel safe in the neighborhood? Do you live here? And we provide resources for follow-up questions to all of our district stations.
Since we're sort of doing it in between here, all right, so how are you sending out the questionnaire?
This would be post 911 call or post non-emergency call via text message.
By a text message?
Yes.
And how fast would that be?
It would be after the call is resolved, so after the
So is
officers.
that day or?
Yes, that
Okay.
same day.
You know, I guess a lot of industries do it this way, and I'm applaud that you're trying to figure out what's the best way to do this, because this is difficult. But a lot of industries will do this, and then at times, if it gets to be burdensome for the person to have to answer 15 questions. So I don't know what's the best formula for all of this, but I believe this is a step in the right direction.
So we agree on that. And when we were creating the questions, we looked at that, and we're working with Axon, who is the vendor
Yeah.
for this product, and they gave us sample questions that other agencies are using around the United States. So, of course, this is going to start off as a pilot within the next 4 weeks. We'll evaluate the data and how many responses we are getting, and then look to change the questions if need be, if people are skipping questions or we're not getting as many filled out. So we're looking to, this will be the starting point of it. Hopefully get from August to December as a pilot, getting some data. Then hopefully in January, when we're starting a new calendar year, we'll have good information coming in with solid questions that we want to have that we'll be able to report on. But this also addresses the issue of reaching out to the underrepresented communities. This isn't a survey that's going to be posted online. This is something that's going to be sent to people that are directly affected by issues in our community and that the police are responding to. So we're good to see that representation come. That's going to be a little more applicable to our community. So we're looking forward to having this and hopefully see what the results turn out to be.
And are you sending this out to everybody that calls 911?
The ones that call under the certain call types. Like Lieutenant Field said, we distinguished what type of calls. We didn't want specific call types like sexual assaults and so on for these to go out for re-victimization or any child abuse type cases. So we have created a list, which also can be changed later on depending on if we want to add more categories. But for the pilot, we have limited the number to go out there just to see how it works.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Kristen.
Go ahead.
Oh, Kristen.
Kristen, did you have, yeah. Kristen, you have to throw something at me so I see you. Go ahead.
I'm doing my best to keep an eye on the screen.
And Councilmember Lukey's got my back over there. I think that this is great, and appreciate that y'all are putting this in place. A couple things. One is that what my office is hearing most now is fear about ICE presence and immigration enforcement, and but it's tricky to include that without accidentally conflating MCPD with ICE enforcement. So I don't know how we get around that, or if we can get around that, but I don't know if that's something that you all thought about, and if also that might be related to, like, we're not going to hear from the people who are least likely to call the police right now, which could be in part because of fear about immigration enforcement.
And I agree with that. And the reason and we were going to include other federal agencies is we don't want to have that distinction that we're working in cooperation. We often, I'd say on a daily basis, get calls from community members concerned about immigration enforcement and mistakenly thinking it's Montgomery County Police involved. So we really want to have that clear defined line of where our authority and what we are doing in the community, and get a representation of their personal interaction with the Montgomery County police officer. What we'll also do is we'll look to see if we can put this survey online for those that do not call 911. But the concern with that is the number of responses that we get. We got under 100 responses on our last survey, so we feel it would be a pretty low number that would be coming out to doing it online, but we always have that option to put that out there. But we think of the majority, probably around 95% of our responses are going to come from those that contacted Montgomery County Police for services.
And the other thing is, even when someone says for ICE or whatever, for immigration enforcement, and they are complaining, or there's nothing we can do about it. If you get a survey back from the Montgomery County Police, there's something that can be done. I mean, we don't want to get, I mean, it's a shame that we can't do something about it, but that doesn't mean that, that we're not answering someone's questions.
Yeah, I think it would be a better to put in the county survey that goes out, the quality of life survey that goes out would be a better platform for it to when it addresses public safety rather than attaching it to Montgomery County Police.
Yeah, I think important to note, since we're asking this kind of generalized, like, what are you afraid of right now? Where should we be putting our resources? But yeah, that's one that doesn't really fall, similar to, we're asking about concerns about homelessness, concerns about, various things that that cross departments in terms of who's addressing this as well, that it's really a multi-department response that's needed, and that can be informed by some of the results here. And I would say that that's similar to the immigration concerns. There's some role there for us to play on the police side, which is primarily helping residents to distinguish between the two. And I know that the chief is working on getting NCPD or something to put on the vest for the SAT team, et cetera. But also in terms of funding that we need to be moving, through HHS, et cetera, to help with that. But it's a tricky question. And then in terms of putting it on socials, yeah, I mean, like Nextdoor, we know is very overrepresented in terms of, as you saw for the results, our white residents, our older residents, and in terms of the conversations that we tend to see on there, I would say not necessarily representative of where our general population is as a whole. And so, if we're putting stuff out primarily through MCPD's social media and through Nextdoor, that it's such a small and not necessarily representative slice of the population, and we saw that with the results that we came back, that I don't know that that's even worth it, because it may be misleading in terms of the results that it gets us, and how that relates to our general population. So I think that this is certainly the better way to go, and it'll be useful to get those results back. Oh, the one other piece that I was going to ask about is another issue that we hear about from residents, which is when they call and what they want is an MCOT, but we don't have enough staffing, and so then the police come instead. And is there a way that we could work that in as a potential response to any of those questions to help get some feedback there?
So we will be starting that pilot program with the MCOT in the coming weeks. So we will see how we can incorporate those types of calls for service, because the difficulty is when we're getting this feedback back, what type of call they are. We don't link it to a specific call, so it's not going to say this survey was for incident 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, but we can look to see how we can subcategory. If it's a mental health call, it pulls up another menu or so on, and we'll probably look for that after the pilot begins for both of these, for the MCOT as well as the survey. Once we have that period, and we can work through things and look and see where we can incorporate other data. But again, this is a living survey platform, so we can always incorporate new things into it, and the vendor has been very willing to customize it to what data we want to receive back.
I mean, well, we do have, hypothetically at least now, a situation in which people can call and they can request MCOT, or it can be evident to the dispatcher that this would be an MCOT or joint response appropriate situation, and we're hoping to be able to boost our ability to handle that. But would there be a reason to not have that as part of the multiple choice? The question about maybe, like, I don't remember what it was exactly, but like, what are you happy or not happy about in this call? If one of the options was like, requested a civilian response or a mental health response or something, and did not receive it.
Yeah, we could add that in there. Again, we want to keep the results limited to what Montgomery County Police are doing and how they are satisfied with Montgomery County Police efforts. We don't want to really bring in Health and Human Services response or fire rescue response, just so the data doesn't go the other way. So we have the ability to add that section there if they wanted a mobile crisis team response or a non-police officer response in there. But a lot of those calls are diverted into the first place when they come in, and it's for mobile crisis. That call immediately gets diverted to another call taking center for mobile crisis response. It really doesn't go all the way through our system. If the call is not entered into our CAD for dispatch, it's not going to receive a survey to go out. So unless a police response is dispatched out there, they won't get a survey. But if it's a mobile crisis response with police, then they would get a survey with that.
Okay, I mean, I would still ask that you consider adding that as a choice, because I have heard from residents, and it has been a regular topic of conversation when we've discussed the MCOTs, about when people have called 911 and what they want is MCOT, and dispatch does not, sometimes it's not transferred over because there's just an awareness that, like, this is going to go, no, this is going to sit for hours, because of the staffing situation, or what have you, or the officer on site, if it's not a 911 thing, the officer is like, look, we've got these CIT folks right here, and they're overburdened, et cetera. Anyway, and the person doesn't come, and makes people much less likely, very understandably, to call police if they're to call 911 if they're in that situation. And that is something that we're, trying to address, but I think would be useful information and relevant to whether we are getting those calls in or not, and relevant to kind of the interplay between MCPD and HHS that we're working on building up.
And I did want to point out, for those who are not familiar with the term MCOT, that it's for the Montgomery County. It stands for
Mobile crisis.
Mobile Crisis, whatever team.
Outreach.
Crisis Center.
Mobile crisis outreach team.
Right. Well, I was one of those people who didn't know. Mobile Crisis Outreach Team. I knew what it did. I didn't know what it stood for. So anyhow, anything else, Councilmember? No.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lukey.
Thank you. Government, we're a little heavy on our acronyms. And I too, Nextdoor is a very niche audience, to be fair. I try to avoid Nextdoor just because it's, it's challenging, but I have an account, and so the stuff pops in my inbox, in case, for example, the day we had the coyote loose in my district, near my house, actually, that then ended up in Councilmember Mink's district before it was taken care of. But I think that if you are going to do general outreach to the public where it is not tied to a call for service, anything that is done in that way should be wholly separate from this, because they are different, right? You're measuring different things. The one is measuring the perception of, which is the Nextdoor audience, if you will. Like, I think X, I believe Y. It's not attached to an actual response or call, either to 911 or the non-emergency number. And so that needs to stay in its own bucket. And I know Axion can do that. So, if you have something for that, that's great. And to the point about Councilmember Mink's questions, where it's not attached to an actual 911 call, because the call takers have certain protocols. And while someone may ask for a certain thing on a 911 call, that doesn't mean that's what's going to get dispatched. And it can't. Right, because they're either not going to hold the call till there's an MCOT available 12 hours from now, or you do have to do something if it's come in with 911. That being said, the non-attached to a call for service survey could include that and sort of measure that feeling or that sentiment within the community. I mean, we need more hands in many directions to tackle the types of things we're experiencing out in the community. And I am very supportive of having a wide range of tools to deal with our behavioral health calls and substance abuse crisis calls. But we also have to deal with the realities of what happens in the ECC with who is available and then who responds. And I know that this the survey you're talking about launching in August is targeted specifically to that, where there has been an actual interaction and response from the police department. Will any of the questions deal specifically with what the call taker is asking or discerning?
Yes, Councilmember. So there's a specific question that's asked as far as the call taker. How much do you agree with whether you are handle it in a reasonable time frame if the call taker understood your questions, if they processed it appropriately, and then if the call taker provided clear direction on what kind of type of response that you were going to receive.
Okay. And if someone calls 911 and the ECC picks up and they are specifically saying, it may be the individual themselves who is in crisis, or it may be a family member in the house or a co-resident in the house, but they are saying they want the mobile crisis outreach team, or they, I want a clinician, right? I want that, a therapist. I don't want the police, but I want help, is basically what they're saying, because I doubt that a lot of people ask for specific things in quite those words that we all commonly use. Don't they divert them to the warm line?
That's correct, unless it's a immediate endangerment of life, if there's suicidal or homicidal statements.
Okay. And then if there are self-harm or homicidal statements that are coming across, or what other factors might be considered as to need for immediate dispatch?
If we think there's an imminent threat to themselves or others, particularly what they're saying, or if we are noticing their mental capacity, if they're delusional, or certain things that we need to follow up on, that we think it would be a more timely response to have a law enforcement or a crisis intervention team officer respond out there due to the safety concern.
Okay. And then if, for example, a call is dispatched and mobile crisis goes, but mobile crisis subsequently requests MCPD assistance, would those calls receive this survey too? Or is it only for the non-emergency calls or 911 calls?
It's for any calls that come into our emergency communication center that received a incident number, whether it's non-emergency or 911. So because it needs the phone number to send the text message to. So anyone that calls for police service where there is a incident created, it sends a survey to.
So even if, Mr. Jones calls, the incident number is created in the ECC's, in the dispatch system. But clinician Smith arrives on scene and clinician Smith says, I need MCPD assistance. That would still somehow relate back to the CAD to allow for that survey to go out?
So we typically do not dispatch MCOT directly through our center. So
Okay.
It will start with a police response, and if an officer requests MCOT to respond, that's how they'd be added to the call. So their direct dispatch comes from their center, their crisis center.
Right, but what if it's the other way around, is what I'm asking? Not where patrol went first or where, CIT was on, but where MCOT went, but then subsequently discerned that they need backup. How would that then trigger the response?
So this is actually a frequent occurrence. I guess they're categorized as MC44 or other units from within the crisis center. They often establish themselves on the radio to say, MC44 or MCOT, whatever their designator is,
Yes.
to say that, whatever circumstances have changed or require a police response, we're requesting a patrol or uniform response to assist them with.
And-
when
And
they
so
do that.
then that goes into the dispatch, so that would then
Yes.
trigger, gotcha,
It
okay.
does, exactly. And then it goes into CAD, police officers respond as a result, and oftentimes either reports written or body cameras are activated as a result. It is definitely recorded and memorialized
Right.
as such.
Right, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Farag, please.
Thanks. Another component of what the police statistical data report requires is demographic data on police officers. And the committee's discussed this for multiple years, but over the past 3 years, the department has suffered from significant attrition. The authorized sworn complement, which is the approved number of budgeted positions, has changed very little over that time, from 1,281 officer positions in 2021 to 1,276 positions in 2024. However, due to attrition, the filled sworn complement has decreased more than 10%, with a net loss of 128 officers over those past 3 or 4 years. The number of female officers has declined almost 9% since 2021, but their percentage of the total filled sworn positions has increased slightly from 19.8% in 21 to 20.2% in 24. Over the past 4 years, racial and ethnic representation has shifted, most notably reflecting a 6% reduction of black officers and a 12% reduction of white officers. And although total numbers are relatively small, the percentage of Asian officers has increased 7% over the 4-year period, and the percentage of Hispanic or Latino officers has increased almost 5%. And there are charts on page 7 for your review. The number of officers who live in the county has declined by 19%, dropping from 619 officers in 21 to 504 officers in 24. The percentage of officers who live in the county has also dropped. It was 50% of all officers in 2021 lived in the county, and now it's about 46% of all officers in 2024. The percentage of officers assigned to neighborhood patrols has also declined from 59% of filled sworn complement to only 50% of the filled sworn complement, and the total number of officers assigned to patrol has decreased by more than 24%. There had been 732 officers assigned to patrol in 2021. There are now 554 officers assigned to patrol. I wanted to put this in context with the overtime amounts that have also been reported. There's an overtime chart on page 8 for your review. It shows the number of hours worked in each police district as well as how much overtime increased for 2024. And again, while MCPD's patrol staffing has declined by 24% over the past 3 years, patrol district level overtime has surged. Overall, it has increased by 117%. And it is more than doubled in districts 4, which is Wheaton, 5, which is Germantown, and 6, which is Gaithersburg, Montgomery Village. And this trend, again, the committee has talked about this multiple times over the past several years. It raises long-term concerns about workforce sustainability, officer burnout, and fiscal impacts. And in terms of fiscal impacts, the approved FY25 operating budget appropriated $13.5 million for overtime. I believe they think that the actual overtime for FY25 was closer to $25 million. However, the approved FY26 overtime budget is just $11.5 million, so it was cut by $2 million, even though at the time of the recommended operating budget was discussed, the department had already spent $10.6 million in overtime through January 31st of 2025. They had projected at the time $22.4 million at the end of fiscal year, and they now believe that's closer to $25 million. The department has contracted with a consultant to conduct a staffing study of its Investigative Services Bureau. Additionally, the department is conducting an internal patrol staffing analysis, and both of these should be ready to share with the committee later this fall. In terms of complaints and officer discipline, there's a chart on page 9 that reviews the various measures of complaints against officers, internal affairs investigations, and officer discipline. The total complaints against officers fell by 24% from 23 to 24, and in fact, they have trended down over the past 3 years. Internal Affairs Division, IAD investigations, however, have increased significantly from 30 in 2022 to 58 in 2023, and to 110 last year. The department has advised that the sharp increase in investigations is due to state and local law changes which require complaints involving community members, regardless of severity, to be investigated by the IAD. And in the past, the department had managed those less serious complaints at the district and division levels. The department also indicates that IAD can no longer, quote, decline a case in certain circumstances, such as when a complaint is not credible after an initial review or when a complaint is not an actual violation of policy. As you know, the Maryland Police Accountability Act of 21 created an independent disciplinary process where complaints against police officers that involve community members are filed with the Police Accountability Board and then reviewed by an independent civilian administrative charging committee. MCPD officers fell under this new disciplinary scheme beginning July 1st, 2023. So this 2024 report and its data reflect the first full year of implementation. And while total complaints may include more than just community member related complaints, the civilian complaints by police district remained stable over the past 2 years at 112 complaints each year. In terms of use of force, the total number of times the department used force increased slightly last year from 1,722 times in 23 to 1,766 times in 2024. In spite of that increase, though, use of force-related complaints against officers dropped significantly from 17 in '23 to 3 last year, and no officers violated policy and no use of force-related complaints have been sustained. The department advises that it has not identified a specific trend or verified factors that may have caused the reduction in complaints. It does suggest, however, that the effectiveness of its de-escalation training, the professionalism of its officers, and the impact of body-worn cameras used to clarify complaints may have contributed to the decrease. In terms of overall disciplinary outcomes, the number of officers subject to discipline did increase from 18 officers in 2023 to 25 officers in 2024, and that's an increase of almost 40%. More officers, 14 of them, were subject to suspension with pay and and 7 were subject to written reprimand. The other types of discipline stayed relatively stable. In terms of police and community contact data, I bundled calls for service related to mental health, substance abuse, and the unhoused. There's a table that shows the total number of calls for service for those on page 11. I did want to caution that those data are hard to analyze purely from the policing perspective because there's several other county and nonprofit entities that address these behavioral and social health needs. The increased calls associated with unhoused persons likely mirrors the significant increase in the unhoused population in the county, which did see a point-in-time increase from 894 in '23 to over 1,500 in 2025. There is a slight reduction in 2024 for mental health calls for service, however, which may indicate the mental health needs, including crisis response, are being met before police are needed, or reflect the use of alternative response models like the MCOT team that we've already discussed. In terms of field interview data, Bill 4520 requires this to be disaggregated by race, gender, and ethnicity. In 2023, there were a total of 223 field interviews. In 2024, that number dropped to 174 interviews. The demographic breakdowns did not change significantly from 2023. Last year, 50% of those subject to a field interview were Black, 83% were male, and the plurality of those stopped, or 28%, were between the ages of 18 and 25. In terms of police detentions, these did increase significantly over the past year. There were 592 of them in 2023. There were 746 last year. That's about a 26% increase. And there are charts on page 12 that show the breakdown by race, ethnicity, gender, and age. Male subjects make up the majority of the detentions at 74%. White subjects are also the majority of detentions at 61%. Non-Hispanic individuals are 60% of all detentions. In terms of age, persons ages 18 to 25 comprise 26% of all detentions, followed closely by persons ages 26 to 35 who comprise about 25% of all detentions. The committee has reviewed this report for the past several years. So one of the questions that I had asked of the department is, how are you now using this disaggregated data to inform different types of department initiatives? They've advised that they've used the required data sets to improve data tracking, and some of those examples include adding a secondary clearance code to certain types of calls, which has allowed the department to better capture demographic data on individuals experiencing homelessness, mental health, and substance abuse-related calls. The department has also added a new computer-aided dispatch, or CAD, status codes to better allow it to track officer activities to enhance future reporting. And additionally, the department has developed a public policy input portal that allows community feedback during policy revision process. I do have several potential discussion questions for the committee. You have addressed some of them in terms of the survey, number 2. There are also questions. I did find that a lot of the departmental reports have different data points depending on the report. For example, this report stated there were 155 people who were injured, while the department's annual use of force report states there were 161. And the department indicated that not all information had been submitted, reviewed, and approved in time for this police statistical data report, which is due February 1st. So there is some concern whether or not these different reporting dates might put different data sets out there for community consumption, and it can cause conflict. So I did just want to raise that for your consideration, whether or not the February 1st deadline could be extended later in the year.
Thank you. let's go with that one first. Would that be more helpful if February 1st were not February 1st?
Sure. So just to recap, we do 11 annual reports. So our staff, for the entire year, so when the year closes out, we are now on task to do 11 annual reports that we must publish. Our goal is to publish the ones that are not required by legislation by April 1st. And the reason for that is an incident occurs in late December, whether it's a use of force or has to go through approval process, something gets sent back, has to come on, and they have to submit the report by February 1st, so that means it has to be in draft and everything by the second week in January. And there's going to be, the data reporting is not going to be as accurate if it was required in March or April like we do with our other 10 other reports.
So would that require a legislative change?
Likely. I mean, you could voluntarily do it, but I think that a bill change
Well,
would
if
be
this
better.
is in the legislation, we need to, because that would be the first thing someone says, and you didn't follow your own rules. So I think we should look in, if the committee is okay with that, we should look into that. I'm looking at you, Kristen, I haven't seen any edge, okay, thanks. And the other question I have, on the overtime that you talked about, obviously it is a problem, and you know, when you don't have enough people doing the work that we need to be doing, it becomes even more difficult. But do we know the overtime that Rockville and Gaithersburg are also experiencing? Because they're helping out, or doing more than helping out, in the 1st and 6th districts.
I do not have that data number for the municipalities on how they're handling their overtime. They also have different strategies that they utilize that are not covered on their collective bargaining agreement. They have
Right.
different ways of schedule change notices. Some of these municipalities work 12-hour shifts rather than us that work 10-hour shifts. So there is a variety that would also factor in their amount of overtime that's being used for the municipalities.
Well, I appreciate that, and obviously it's not the exact same, but I think when we talk about reimbursement for the municipalities, one of the discussions is we should be reimbursing what they're helping do for with the county. And so if there's any way we can either get that as a separate information from the municipalities, just so we're kept apprised of that.
I can try.
As well. And we've discussed this, we obviously did not give all the resources that you needed. I think it was the $100,000 figure that you mentioned. And then we say, but we want all this. And that's what's called unfair. The question is, at this point, what would be what you actually need? If this new platform works, can you do it with the resources that you have now, or do you need additional? I mean, at some point, we're not being fair since we are asking, it's legislatively asking to do this.
Sure. So this survey that we're doing is only going to cover the community members for calls for service.
Okay.
So this is not handling those that have not called 911 or a non-emergency number. So if a survey needs to be completed that way, we'd have to find another vendor that could provide that. Or again, we'd have to use the type of system that we used in November of creating a survey and sending it across multiple platforms, which isn't going to be as accurate to pursue out there. So depending on the data that we want to see and feedback we want to get, there would need to be another survey platform out there for other community members that have not had direct interaction with police through 911. So this isn't covering traffic stops. This isn't covering an officer that does a field interview or does a detention. It's not covering any of that. So this is just one segment of the police department's responsibility that this survey is covering.
So, and to your point about traffic stops, which is, people are never happy to be stopped, so therefore they might be more than likely to send a survey if they were asked. I guess if we could find out, A, what are others doing, how can we do this better, and B, how much that would cost, and then let us, Ms. Farag and all of us know, so that we can try to to come up with the resources that are necessary to be fair. We want the information, though. The problem is if you can't get it, that's not fair, and if the public can't give it, that's not fair. So we have to figure this out, and then I see you, Kristen, I do. And then once we figure this out, to go from there. Councilmember Mink, please.
Yeah, I was just going to note that as we're looking into that an option that we've seen used by some of the other departments and agencies is the canvassing option as a way to reach people who aren't proactively reaching out to government entities as well. And obviously that the costs are going to be different depending on where how much canvassing they're doing. But I think that's been an economical, like relatively economical, high return option. So something that we may want to look into for this as well. Not that, as the public knows, as we all know, we have lots of money everywhere, but I think it makes a lot of sense to just explore what's available and what our most economical means of reaching those folks who are not currently would be.
And while you're speaking, is there any other points to this topic?
The only other, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ms. Farag. No, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I thought you were talking to me, but please go ahead, Councilmember Mink.
I always am talking to you, Ms. Farag. Yes, go ahead.
Right. That's right. We all know and appreciate it. I was just going to say the increase in detentions that we saw. To what do we attribute, or what can we learn from that?
Well, I don't know what we can attribute it to. Again, it depends on, this data wasn't broken down by districts. So depending on where where the detentions were occurring, if it was in Silver Spring or Wheaton district, there's a lot more detentions and field interviews that occur down in that district. And depends on the calls for service that are, if there was a lookout or so on. So there's a lot of different factors into it. So it's a little hard to dive into the specific numbers on that without just doing a complete study on those detention numbers, which we can also look into and provide further information on.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I yield.
Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you.
I'm going to kind of go backwards since we were already on that topic. I'm assuming that if you were looking at, trying to break it down a little further for the public, the millions who watch from home. Really, it's just my parents watching from home. But if you were looking at something like that, like why in a particular district there were more detentions, you would say when you say calls for service, you're talking about things that would then lead officers to have a particular suspicion that something was in fact going wrong because you were receiving calls from businesses or calls from residents, or patrol officers were observing directly things in that area. So could you explain that a little better, other than just calls for service, and what that means?
Sure. So if there was a theft that occurred at a retail store and they provide a lookout for a certain individual that's specific to it, and if we have more retail stores in a certain demographic area, like down in Silver Spring or Bethesda, and we get more those types of theft calls, then there would be more detentions there. It also looks into the amount of staffing for proactive activity. We have district community action teams only in certain districts, which are uncontrolled units that don't get calls for service. So they're out there to address crime trends through data and either deter a crime or stop crime that's occurring, so it could lead to more detentions while they're doing surveillance or other types of proactive enforcement. So those factors go into it, and for the calls of service, it would mostly be lookouts that are being provided to our officers for specific incidents.
And those lookouts are not just generated from, and I'm going to use downtown Silver Spring since that was the example we've been using thus far, but particularly in that area, because we do have issues across multiple jurisdictions all coalescing in one spot. Those be on the lookout notices could be coming from Prince George's, they could be coming from the District of Columbia, and there are, in certain portions of of your area of responsibility, need to be able to collaborate and work with other departments for other things that are going on where there may be people in transit, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. For the CAD status codes that you said would get added, could you talk a little bit more about what those status codes are?
So, good morning. So, what we did with the CAD status codes was we wanted to find a way to try and capture officers' time that they're not on calls. Like typically, and it's a cultural thing, officers are concerned about being held out of service for, say, a meal or report writing, because then one of their fellow shiftmates is going to get the call on their beat. And they're very protective of their area. They try to maintain their, what we call beat integrity. So what we did is we implemented some status codes that we called busy but available. So what that did is they could be held out in CAD on a status but still available for call, which is a change for the ECC personnel and it was a change
Right.
for our personnel. So
Okay.
if they were report writing, they could still be available.
Right.
If they were doing traffic enforcement, they could still be available.
Right.
So we came up with about 10 different codes that they could use so we could try and better track how their time's being spent. Now, again, they have to call out and hold themselves out on it for it to work, and that's a change in habits for them. So
Sure.
we're working at it, and we did see progress in the first month where we reviewed data, which is encouraging. But that's what we did with those codes in an effort to be able to have better data.
And it's more flexible and meets the realities of what's happening out in the field, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and so the first month it was in play was June or May?
We did our first pilot, I think it was May, we started, and it was just in 2D, 3D, and 6D. So
Okay.
we did it for a couple months in those districts just to try to implement it, see how it would work, and try to get a way that we could actually have a dashboard and we could try and pull some of that information up and see what was going on. So the first couple months have been working on that, and then it went countywide July 1, I believe,
Okay.
when we went county, all 6 districts.
So those first couple of months gave you a chance to see, whenever you're doing something new, there's time to grow and learn and go, what might need to be adjusted or tweaked, or how does this really work when someone interacts with it? So were there takeaways from that process that you implemented before the July 1st rollout?
Initially, we didn't have a very good way to look at the data. So, for example, one of the things was to see how long report writing was utilized. The data came back in seconds, not minutes, not hours, seconds. So there were things that we needed our technology division to help us out with so we could capture that information better. We also wanted to be able to look at location. There's certain
Right.
locations where we're spending more of this time. Say
Gotcha.
if we're doing community policing activities. So, yeah, we're trying to refine some of those things and give the district commanders better tools to look at it and break it down.
Great, thank you. Thank you for Ms. Farag for the information about the disciplinary trends and everything's been in flux and shift and over the past few years, and so we've now had a few years to get adapted and used to that. But for situations where there has been a formal disciplinary proceeding and the discipline has been meted out, if you will, what have you seen in terms of management within the department in terms of the efficacy of that?
And specifically, what are you talking about, like trial boards part or before that?
No, like if there's not a desire to go on to the trial board and the department says, yep, this should be disciplined and it is disciplined, or, trial boards, we'll keep that as a separate thing. I'm not going to go down that path. But what's the, in terms of corrective action and or sanction, what has been the effect of doing that and handling it under this process in terms of change in behavior, in terms of overall impact on the officers?
Sure. So I would say it's too early to see on change of behavior wise, because we prior, a lot of the things are now coming back as discipline, where discipline is being issued by the Administrative Charging Committee would have been handled as a training issue under the prior system. So to determine how effective that is, there's several factors that we would want to look at. Is if it's correcting the behavior, and how is it affecting morale also.
Right.
Where an issue would have been taken care of by the supervisor before and provided remedial training is now being a letter of reprimand in their file. So, and looking at those two separate issues there, and, we get the letters from the Administrative Charging Committee on each incident that comes across, and the lowest level of discipline that's being issued is letter of reprimand, where people make mistakes. And I always said there is intentional mistakes and there's accidental mistakes. And it seems like there's no variation now in whether discipline is going to be issued for accidental mistakes. Everything's is being considered intentional, which takes away an opportunity for us to train on that until later on when we have to provide department-wide training on something, rather than dealing with a situation that would be turned around a lot quicker through the informal process, rather than going through a full internal affairs investigation then to administrative charging committee.
So, right. So, I mean, like in terms of remediation on a training issue, right? Because I mean, like when I did training, if they took the test at the end of the thing I taught and they didn't score high enough, when I say they, I mean statewide. I'm not trying to talk about MCVD specifically, but they would have to have what was considered remediation one-on-one, wherein if there was more than one person per class, I would do it as a group, and then they would retake that particular test. So what gets in the way of doing sort of remediation now, or isn't there? I mean, because you could still be doing that supervisor level, more immediate remediation, even though the more formalized process still has to play out.
Sure. So the complaints aren't going directly to the districts anymore. They're going immediately to internal affairs. So there's a delay in getting that response. So some of the typical violations that we consider training is, I forgot to turn on my body-worn camera, or I forgot to fill out a consent search form, even though I have it on my body-worn camera that they have given consent. So if that is sent to the administrative internal affairs investigation is done, the officer is brought in for interrogation, witnesses are called and so on, then the findings are sent to administrative charging committee. You're talking most likely a couple-month process from beginning to the end. Typically in the past, if this was complained about in an informal process, it would be immediately sent to the district level sergeant, and it would be handled at that level within a week or two. So providing that training on the backside of it, you're basically issuing a letter of reprimand to the officer saying you didn't turn your body-worn camera on. Do you consider that training, or do you consider that discipline at that point?
Right. I mean, to me, that's notice of what you did, right?
Correct.
That's like a notice of your violation. Like, this is the thing you failed to do. But, my concern with that and sort of the timing of it, and fully, like, we have a process that has to be followed, but it's not clear to me why there can't be a co-notification so that the person's direct supervisor has an opportunity that is more immediate to address that. Because, like, as we all know, things are easier to remediate, if you will, once you've addressed them when it's fresh in someone's mind, when you are remembering the scenario. Regardless of what happens in the more formalized process, there is value to having something addressed more immediately in there as well. And so that's interesting. And obviously, as you noted, since the IAD investigations have increased because they have more things that are must-dos now on the to-do list, but I'm assuming they still have the same staffing and or lower staffing, so you've got an increase in volume of work, less people or sane people, but that increases time to result.
We actually increased our internal affairs by 2 sergeants when this began. But obviously they took on a significantly number of more cases because of the informals, but we did increase it by 2 sergeants. I think they currently have 2 vacancies in now due to promotions and other issues going on. So we did see that early on to make sure we have the proper amount of staffing there, and we'll continue to evaluate that with our other staffing needs throughout the department.
And one of my concerns too about the not being able to immediately address some things with, what I would consider training or remediation type instruction is that there is flexibility and flux in the supervisory roles, right? So, in just dealing with the overall departmental staffing challenges and need to be adaptive over time in order to meet the community's needs, you all are also having to move people from different positions. So it's entirely possible that someone ends up, their supervisor is no longer their supervisor by the time the more formalized process has completed. And I do think that's a missed opportunity for being able to, deal with the human aspects of all of these things, right? So just something to keep in mind. Thanks.
Thank you. Have we answered all the questions that are on this list? I think we have. We've sort of been all around them, but
The only other thing I had wanted to bring to the committee's attention was for possibly adding a data set that includes HHS partnered responses to mental health calls for service to better understand how co-response or alternative response may be impacting service delivery. Of course, this has to be very police specific, and we can't just do MCOT only type calls. But if it's something the committee wishes to consider, this would have to be a legislative change to require that additional data set.
would that be helpful to you all?
I can't particularly say it's going to be helpful to us. It is another data set to create, so it does take additional resources to get that information. And again, a lot of this is to be transparent, provide information to the community about what we're doing. So if it's a need that the community wants or the council wants, we would have to look into how we would collect that information and see how we can add it into the report and where we'd be pulling that information from.
If we could, I think that would be helpful, but I also think if we're going to do a legislative fix, we should know at the same time how much it's going to be, what resources you're going to need, and how much that's going to cost for us to do this. Let's do it right from both sides.
Right, and I'd also say, and I looked into this earlier, that out of the 11 annual reports we do,
Yeah.
a lot of stuff is duplicated in these reports. So when we talk about police demographics in this, that's also reported in our annual report. So if there is a legislative change, I think we need to really look at to reduce the number of duplication that my staff is having to report out, because it is a small amount of staff doing these reports, is to make sure that we're not being duplicative in all the 11 reports that we put out there and putting out the same information. That can also cause confusion to the community.
Well, and to your point earlier, if you have to do something in February and something in April, I mean, how's this working for you? So
It's
yeah.
double the work.
Yeah. Yeah, so if we can look into that, I think we're going to try our best to do the right thing. The question is what's the right thing and how to do it. So, okay. All right, then we're going to move on to our second topic, which is 2576 about the Amos grant. And who all is coming down? Are you coming? Yes. And if the new folks can please identify themselves.
Good afternoon, Eric Bernard, Executive Director, Montgomery County Volunteer Fire Rescue
It's
Association.
still morning, Mr. Bernard, yeah. There you go.
Dominic Del Pozo, Fiscal Management Division Chief and Fire and Rescue.
Thank you very much. And we're going to ask Ms. Farag to lead us through this one.
Sure. This is a supplemental appropriation to approve a state grant, the Senator Amos Fire Rescue and Ambulance Fund State 508 grant, which is approximately $2 million. The supplemental appropriation represents the priorities established by the Montgomery County Fire Chief in coordination with the Montgomery County Volunteer Fire and Rescue Association for the renovation of stations and acquisition of fire and rescue equipment. The county executive transmitted this supplemental appropriation on June 11th, 2025. The council introduced it on June 24th, and the council held a public hearing on it on July 15th. There were no speakers. Again, the source of the funds is a state grant. LFRD's local fire and rescue departments, or LFRD's, request for funding as well as approved funding are displayed on circles 8 through 10 for your review. For FY25, LFRD requests totaled about $4.5 million, of which $2 million was initially approved, and Circle 10 lists actual distributions for each LFRD, which comports with state grant award amount of $1.995 million. Again, the supplemental appropriation and the source of funds is a state grant. It will not have an impact on the county general fund undesignated reserves. There is a racial equity and impact assessment that was provided by the Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice that was transmitted on July 9th. They advised that this supplemental request provided no evidence of a documented process that considers racial or other disproportionalities in fire and emergency medical risk regarding the distribution and rehabilitation of fire apparatus and capital equipment and the renovation of facilities used to house apparatus. Council staff is recommending approval as submitted by the executive, but also thought the committee may wish to hear a brief overview about the application and approval process for the funding distribution.
And I agree with that. Could we hear that, please?
Sure. We've been using a similar process now for over 30 years for AMIS, EMST, and ESPP, where a notice is put out to all the LFRD chiefs and presidents. They have approximately a 30-day time frame to submit applications. They come into the association. Chief Sutton has put together a funding committee.
And just for those, Chief Sutton is the...
Chief Sutton is the president of the Montgomery County Volunteer Fire and Rescue Association. So we represent all 19 volunteer fire departments, and we work side by side in our awesome combination system here in the county. This committee then reviews all applications. We have a staff member, Richard Reif, who retired from Montgomery County government with over 30 years of service in the financial field. And he reviews, he corresponds with the department chiefs and presidents if there's further documentation required. That then goes to the committee. They meet, review all the documents. They make a recommendation to the board. The board of directors of the MCVFRA are 9 members. And they review the recommendations from the committee, and they make a decision that is sent out to all 19 departments. They have 30 days to file an appeal if they want to change. If not, we then submit it to MCFRS, to the fire chief. He will then send out to his subject matter experts in the department. So if you're purchasing a piece of apparatus, he'll send it to the apparatus team to review to make sure it meets all the necessary specifications county government requires. When the chief has all his subject matter expert reports in, he then meets with Chief Sutton and myself and Chief Kelly, the Division Chief of Volunteer Services, and we take all the recommendations and we come up with, do we accept? Once there's consensus of both MCFRS, MCVFRA, it goes over to council. And public hearing, that's where we're at today.
Thank you very much. And we know that this is certainly needed funds, and I guess I didn't realize it had been 30 years that they've been doing this.
Since 1972, we've had
It's also scary
AMIS.
that that's 30 years.
No.
It's more than 30
that's
years.
but the process we do, we amended it. The last time was we've been doing roughly the same process for 30 years.
Right. It's scary how fast 50 years happens as well. And I'm fine with this. I don't know about the other committee members, but yes, I have a head shake. I have a head shake and a yes. So, do you actually need a vote, Ms. Frog? Yes. Would you like to?
I'd like to move to approve the supplemental appropriation.
A second?
Been moved and seconded, and we should all vote. All those in favor raise their hand, and it's unanimous. Okay?
Thank you.
Kindly.
Thank you. Thank you all for everything you do. Very good, and with that, we are adjourned.